Authenticity is non-negotiable. If one is not authentic, it really comes out. And I think that's the test of leadership. I always advise leaders, if you're on social media and you don't have the time, don't be there on the social media. Job of a communicator is also to give the outside in view. A lot of times companies don't have that.
All these new age gurus and influencers who have never led us anything in their lives, they lecture people how leaders should behave.
Prioritize very, very wisely. I've always prioritized certain things in my life. I will not go to every meeting just to be there. I don't really waste my time on all that.
I find it very cringy, those templates which come out on LinkedIn. Every company will say today's highlighted employee, and then they will put a picture of an employee who will say, I am so happy I have got an opportunity. I don't like those. I mean, have an authentic, self-branding. Everybody should have that. So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending on where you're joining us from, for this new episode on Towards a Better World, my Thinkly community, where I, Ayon Banerjee, speak to some of the most inspirational people from all walks of life. Today's conversation is about a subject that's extremely relevant and critical to the times we live in. And it's also something I am personally very passionate about. That's the reason we took a while to do this, because I was waiting for the right guest to invite who could do justice to this. Let me give you some context. Till about 3 decades back, the front page of your newspaper needed to be frozen at a cutoff point on the night before. Remember? The digital age brought in the flexible front page, making it possible to change the headlines that stared at you from your computer screen several times during the day. And then social media took it one step further, not just ensuring that you encountered only curated headlines as per your preferences and your tribes, but also that you didn't have time enough to read beyond the headlines. And then, of course, the post truth decade that made it difficult to even determine if the headlines that you were consuming were actual facts or not. Today, in a day and age where there are more cell phones than toothbrushes in the world, I'm serious, I'm not kidding. Anyone with a smartphone, and which is almost everyone, is a broadcaster, is an opinion maker, an influencer, and a social commentator with access to a billion screens instantaneously. Today, regardless of whether you are a CEO or a regular employee, whether you are a politician or an anti establishment critic, you have the power of infinite connectivity to deliver your message. And yet, if you've noticed that despite all modern tools and tackles that we are seeing, we see a sharp decline in effectiveness and also grace all around us. We are seeing iconic organizations crumble, and we are witnessing established regimes lick the dust because of their inability to either communicate the right message or communicate it via the right medium in the right way to the right audience. Hence, to do a communications 101, I had to find someone who's been through this entire cycle and who's been very effective in each phase of the changing landscape of this industry. So, Rachana Panda, our guest today, though she needs no formal introduction, is one of the top communication PR leaders in Asia with over 25 years of leadership experience spread across some of the most iconic organizations of the world, and someone who's been at the center of several organizational transformations where communications played a major role. A Harvard Business School alum who leads Bayer's comms team for APAC. She's also part of Bayer's global comms leadership team. We simply could not have found someone better than Rachana for today's show, and you will see why. So, without any further ado, let me welcome Rachana Panda to Towards a Better World. Welcome, Rachana.
So thank you so much, Ayon. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the gracious and a very interesting, introduction to me. But I'm really honored to be a part of this discussion.
Thank you, Rachana, and we are really thankful to you for having taken time out. I know you have such a busy calendar, and you took time to do this, so we are really very grateful. So, since I don't want to waste a single moment while you are live with us, let's get into it if you're okay with it. So, let me start by asking the most obvious question to an industry veteran like you, and which would be about evolution of the industry, and which I kind of touched upon when I was giving the introduction. So you are someone who's worked across a broad spectrum of industries, starting from the 90s. And you are someone who is definitely seen it all. How print and visual media was disrupted by the internet, which was again disrupted by the advent of early social media, and then which then moved to the adaptation to instantaneous and 24/7 smartphone audiences of today. And finally, now with AI playing the biggest leveler and disruptor, you are someone who's definitely seen it all, and you have worked across all these chapters of the industry history. So, can you give us a view on the pros and cons that you have had to deal with over the years, and how does a comms leader stay relevant in such a relentlessly transforming world, Rachana?
Thanks, Ayan. Very interesting question. But I must tell you, I almost feel like a dinosaur in the entire
Mm.
phase. It's been years, it's been decades. But yeah, this is a very interesting question because I also go back thinking how much has changed. Really, I mean, it's been a huge change. And I think if there is one sector or one function which has changed drastically, it is communications because of the change in medium, change in the way of messaging, change in leadership styles, and also change in stakeholder expectation. Today, we are in a phase of what we call citizen journalism, which means everybody has a smartphone and everybody is a journalist because they have a smartphone and they love to bring out whatever anybody can give out their views on a point, which is great. I think this is a fantastic time to be experiencing the entire change. The news also is coming out from multiple channels, not just one channels, and in different formats, which is again very interesting, and it gives us an opportunity to be creative. But attention spans are shrinking. Today, we are talking about 7-second videos or messages, which is very, very difficult from the communications point of view in terms of communication teams. The other thing is differentiating fake and real. And we all know what we're going through. I mean, all the messages that we get, most of the communication teams are now struggling or spending a lot of their times in differentiating both of these. What is real? What is fake? How do we check this out? How do we ensure this does not get into a crisis? So that's a big, to-do in the to-do list of a communications person. But the advantages are that the reach is huge. We can reach millions or maybe billions of people at the same time. And again, in terms of being creative, there is no end to creativity. There's enough tools. In terms of messages, what remains constant is authenticity. What remains constant is how do you connect to people 101? How do you ensure what you say and how you say is something which is very, very critical these days. So clarity, authenticity, relevance, these are things which continue to remain same, even though things in terms of medium has changed, reach has changed, the way of expectations of people have changed.
Fantastic. Clarity, authenticity, and relevance. This is my takeaway from a communications guru's introduction, and very insightful. Some of these things, of course, I know this as an observer, but some of these things which you said really, like 7-second videos you mentioned. I mean, it's really difficult to convey a message, right, effective message in 7 seconds. And I'm sure that it's very challenging for people to kind of merge content with the medium and the style these days. So great insights, and I'm sure that as we go ahead, we'll uncover more secrets of the trade from you, Rachana. So moving on, and you kind of touched that in your answer, and we'll move there. So that is my favorite subtopic under communications, which is authenticity. And since you and I have both worked under John Flannery, the erstwhile chairman of GE, and I had the privilege of hosting John on this podcast a few months back, and you know that. So John had made a very powerful statement. He said that authenticity is the absolute linchpin of all communication. However, as an industry leader myself, a student of organizational behavior, and also as an author, I often notice a lack of authenticity in leadership communication these days. Not everywhere, but in many places. And especially in large organizations, where leaders tend to follow pre-scripted narratives, which are also influenced by trends and hashtags. and which kind of dampens the messaging, makes it benign. And I have also seen this in this mad scramble to garner engagement, or likes or whatever you call it. Leaders, including senior leaders, they get their social media content, post written. Without naming them, I know of people who are like senior partners in big four consulting firms who get their LinkedIn posts written by comms interns in the company, and which is not probably the right way to for a leader to communicate. And now, of course, with things like chat gpt coming mainstream, most communication that we see around us seem like copies of each other. So the next question, Rajna, is, as a comms and PR expert, what's your advice to leaders on how they can retain their authenticity and differentiation and yet deliver effective messages internally as well as externally? Rachana.
Thanks, Ayon, for that one. And this reminds me of John and his style of communications. To start off with, authenticity is non-negotiable, and it comes out very strong on in the paper, in the LinkedIn post, in the camera. If one is not authentic, if it is scripted, it really comes out. And I think that's the test of leadership. How do you communicate in the right manner with guardrails, of course, because we are all working for corporates, we with guardrails, but yet connect with people. And there is no two way about being authentic, right? I remember John when I was working with him, and I'll give a little bit of an anecdote. We wrote for him and we sent something saying, "Do you want to send it out?" And he used to send a monthly sort of a message to employees. But what he did was he just switched on one of those cameras and spoke from the heart, right? And I can never forget that. The best communication uh, tips I've got, or learnings, have been one of from John. He's one of my leaders that I've learned a lot, I must say. And authenticity is something that I've seen him do that. And I've seen other leaders as well who would travel, take their own camera, do a little bit of a video, speak to the employees. That comes from the heart. I think that is non-negotiable. I do agree that certain leaders take the help of somebody else writing it for them, which is not absolutely wrong, right? It's okay to take somebody's help because somebody is, that one is busy. But how do you put your thoughts into it? How do you review it? How do you make sure that it is from your heart, is something that one needs to do himself or herself. I always advise leaders, if you're on social media and you don't have the time, don't be there on the social media. If you're there, then you have to invest that time, talk to the people, engage with people yourself, rather than letting somebody else do it. Because at the end, it comes out very strongly and straight, that you're not doing it from your heart. Also, I think it's good for communicators are supposed to be trusted advisors. At some point, communicators also need to come up and say, hey, this is what they can give inputs, give some advice, saying this is what the audience would love to hear from you. But the write up, the content has to come in from the leader himself or herself. On AI, I would say that, I see it slightly differently, Ayon. I think embracing AI, or chat GPTs, or all of this, I think it is for making our life easy. A lot of times I've seen using some of these co-pilot tools that right now we're using in Bayer. It's very easy to bring out the minutes of the meeting or a summary. Using all of this for communication is fine, but one has to invest that time. There is no two things about it. I think own voice, own perspective, and authenticity is something that I would say every leader has to invest that into the messaging.
Very true. Own voice and own perspective is very, because what you said, I totally agree that using the co-pilot or AI is probably not bad. It can make your life easy, like you said, to summarize, etc. But the soul of the messaging should bear the character of the person, or the personality of the person who is delivering the message. I remember, and again, talking of John, there was he was mentioning in the podcast that when he was leading healthcare, he would go on a customer visit, and from a cab in New York, he wanted to just kind of record a message and send it out. And he said that the comms team would stop him, that this is very un-CEO like. So, but he said when he became chairman, he said that I had more freedom, so I could manage to do that. And he could actually reverse perceptions of people by being just looking into the. And it's not that John was an orator par excellence like a Barack Obama. So, and he was a normal guy when he spoke in the camera, but his honesty would come forth, and that people could connect, and people could see that this is a person I could hang out with or grab a beer with, if I'm in the same room. So that personality comes across when a person is authentic. And you said it very rightly, that probably people could help, and busy people definitely you could take help from somebody to do your comms, to your messaging, but it better have your voice in that. So that's very important. Thanks, Rachana. Great perspective. So, and now I would slightly, it's a take off from your, it gave this idea came from your last answer. So I'll broach upon a sensitive topic, which is managing constructive conflict. So I know, and that a conflict-free entity is not always a winning entity. We need debate and discourse before we put any strategic messaging out there. However, what I have observed these days, that a great disservice that we've probably done in the past 20-ish years is that we've made the comms team something of a support function. I don't like this phrase, but something like that, support function, like we've done with HR. So, of sorts, instead of them being an integral part of the leadership table, as a result of this, and not everywhere, not every organization is like this, many places I'm saying. And as a result of this, what has happened is that the comms team doesn't always get to push back on leadership mandates, even when a pushback might be fair and logical. I mean, I know you as a leader, and you just touched upon it. You are, as a leader, you are very forthright, and I have always seen you with a distinct voice of your own that stands by the core principles of the company, and you are not easily influenced by personality cults per se. But not all communication leaders we see out there are like that. And so what would be your advice to young comms professionals? And I know that because I have got a young comms professional at home. My daughter is a comms professional. So and how do they retain a strong voice and push back when necessary? And if you can give an example, that would even help matters even more.
Sure. So, Ayan, pushing back is an art which
Mhm.
one can only learn with time. You need a little bit of gray hair, I guess, you need a little bit of experience, deep understanding of the subject. So, pushing back is an art, I would say, which comes with age, gray hair, experience, understanding of the subject, and expertise. And that gives the confidence to be able to push back. I was not always somebody who would push back or have a view on things, but I learned it very early in my life. And that was because of maybe the experience and also encouragement of my leaders. All the leaders I've worked have been extremely encouraging of a diverse view. And
Mm.
of course, there were, I mean, when I say all, it's, mostly, not all, but I think that was important. Second, most of the companies that I've worked with have also encouraged, whether it's GE, whether it's Bayer right now, we encourage to voice out, to give opinion. And that is why we, as communicators, we call ourselves trusted advisors. To reach the stage of a trusted advisor, you need to be able to understand the subject, also the perspective of the leader, which is at times a little difficult. We also are sometimes too much taken by the guardrails or limitations. Sometimes we have to let go of the experience, let go of the past nuances that we would have about a leader or subject. Sometimes our job is to make the other person say, hey, these are the guardrails, this is how we do things, but flow in your own way. I think that's also important, which comes again with age, I would say, and stage. Second is choosing the battles wisely and at the
Mhm.
right time. You can't fight on all fronts, and that is not just for communications, but for any other function, right? You have to choose your battles wisely, rightly, and very timely. We have to be able to handle one thing at a time. Sometimes we do too many things, get frustrated. I would say choosing battles rightly. Second is how do you push back is very more important than why you push back. How is very important, with logic, with rationale, with due respect. And I've seen most of the times when we push back or give our perspective, leaders do take it up if you have the right context, right rationale around it. Sometimes, and the job of a communicator is also to give the outside in view. A lot of times, companies don't have that. And this is one function, I would say, which is most external facing and also very ingrained internally. The function can actually give back a lot of views from the employees as well. So, and also externally. One of the instances in one of the companies that I worked in Alstom, we had something called cafezinos, which means coffee conversations. And communications was leading that. No other function was a part of it. The employees, a roundtable of employees, diverse employees with the CEO. And communications would encourage the discussion because communications has the ability to be able to feel the pulse of the market, external employees, what our customers saying, and also, what the media is saying, external, all the external audiences and internally. So we are a very unbiased, neutral function. So if we are not able to bring our views to the table, it will be a real disservice and a huge loss for any organization. I always say becoming friends with a communicator is the best thing that any CEO or any leader can do, because that's where you get the best you become a better leader. Every leader needs the best, communication skills, and that's what comes out, from a communications function. So pushback timely with a lot of grace and empathy, bringing in credibility, experience, deep knowledge of the subject, and doing it the right way.
Very insightful, I think. And what you mentioned, the how you push back is very important. The manner in which you push back is very important. It should not be abrasive. It should be inclusive, I think. And you mentioned Alstom. I don't know if you worked with Hari at any point, Hari Menon.
I did, Hari
So
Menon.
Hari, close friend of mine, he came on this podcast some months back. So we did an HR 101 with Hari. So he's one of my favorite HR leaders. So your Cafezino reminded me of Alstom days, and yeah, and they did a good job. I think Alstom was a very authentic company that way. There was a lot of free flowing communication between leadership, and they used to really make efforts to do that. And one, as a follow up on this question, Rachana, I'm curious. So you work with CEOs and you work with CEOs across different organizations. So every leader has different strengths, right? Some people are so in this world, for example, we have uh, to take an example. I don't know how popular that example would be, but Elon Musk said he does his own communication, right? And he has a way of conveying his message. He'll carry a sink into the office and say, let it sink in. I mean, he has a style. Donald Trump has his own style. Like he is very impromptu and impulsive, and he'll just do it himself kind of person. On the other hand, we see many other leaders who are, as you said, guardrails. So they have like right advisors around them and who put out a messaging which is very curated and calculated, and they put it out in the right way, politically right way, etc. And then there are people, in terms of personality, there are some people who love to talk and communicate. There are people who don't. So there are like dominant introverts and dominant that entire discourse. So have you ever encountered situations where you had to coach a leader on communication, when the leader was reluctant about communications?
Many times, many times, right?
Mhm.
Many times. And that is where I say a communications person or a leader has the skill to be able to give the confidence to a leader, right? And we have to use it rightly and timely. If we overdo it, then it's a risk. If we underplay it, then again there's a risk to that as well. I've had a lot of opportunities where I've had to build the confidence of a leader, particularly the new CEOs who get
Mhm.
into that, and that is where you become trusted advisors, right?
Mhm.
And also we have to learn a little more about the leader, his style, his or her style, what they are good at. And hence we do something called a media training or a media sensitization. Every leader goes through a media sensitization where they learn their what to say, how to say, their skill sets, plus their style, we as communicators get to know. I would advise all the leaders listening in, tuning in, to definitely ask your communications person to, help you with the media training. That really helps. There are many tools, not just a training program like this. Second is, I also always say, language or talking it out, is not always the best, judgment of a communicator, right? There's some people who talk less, talk few words, but make great impact. I think that is also very powerful. And then there are people who talk well, but during some times you have to talk less. And we need to know when to talk less, and when to talk more. So, and how to connect with different generations, how to use visual communication, how to do videos, how to do your social media. But I think it's a process. Leaders evolve. So does the communications person, gets to learn from the leader. But yeah, I've had huge opportunities like this, whether in GE or in my early organizations, and now in Bayer, I get to work with great communicators. Not everybody is perfect in English, but I always say that language is no test or no sign of a perfect communicator. So without talking in the regional languages, in vernacular, all one has to do is be authentic, and also have a good communications partner. I think in all the companies that I've worked, I'm blessed, I would say. I've had the function is treated very seriously, very strongly. So I think that is the sign of a good organization, when you have the functions that let them do their part of the role, and then pick it up. At best communications functions are those who are able to become great advisors to their leaders.
Great. I think you made a very important point, Rachana, which is here when you said that the mode is not that important as the authenticity part of it. So and I wanted to ask you before, I kind of skipped it because I picked on one point from your last answer. So I wanted to talk on transferability, because you mentioned intergenerational thing, right? So the intergenerational workforces today. So I wanted to ask you about transferability, because we are dealing with a multi-generational workforce, and we are also dealing with a multi-generational marketplace and a client base today. So we have at least 4 generations coexisting today out there. So we often see messages which get lost in translation these days, either because the chosen medium is wrong, or sometimes the chosen style doesn't land as it should land. And we have so many examples of that, where people make, and very smart people make those errors. They put out a communication via a medium or in a style that which is not the right style to adapt to the audience which it is meant for. So as a communications expert, what would be your recommendation to leaders on how to craft their narratives so that they are absorbed on the same plane of sensibilities?
So first, I would say one needs to prepare a bit, right? A lot of leaders just get into an employee town hall, or an external meeting, etc., without preparation. That is not to be done. We have to prepare means know your audience well. First, I mean, the way we're talking now is very different than how we would deal with a media discussion, or how we would talk to our employees. It is important to know what's in your audience's mind, whether it's an employee or others. Even one-to-one conversation, when we go for customer meetings, one has to understand and prepare a little. That is very important. Second is, again, coming back to being candid. Be authentic, and the last point is feedback. How do you have two-way communication, whether it is in the social media engagement? And engagement does not always mean, likes or comments. It could be leave a question. I've seen, and you know that, and coming back to John again, he would always end his messages saying, what do you think? How do you encourage the other person to, respond or give a comment or a feedback without pushing them to do beyond or making it very superficial. Even in an employee discussion, how do you encourage discussions? How, even if a tough discussion, whenever we have to have a tough discussion, how do you start, how do you end, how do you do with empathy, how do you do with respect, is extremely important. There are, I've seen leaders who've messed up but yet gone back and said a sorry and apologized. I think that's the best part of communication. You can always, at least internally, externally also, if there is a goof up, I think it is best to say, hey, I didn't realize I messed up. And that is where your communication team comes into place. But you have to take that feedback. I don't think many of us do that as leaders, taking feedback. But once you take the feedback, act upon it, but has to be done at the right time, very fast. Externally, particularly, we have seen cases recently
Yes.
where, if the teams are not empowered, if the communication teams are not empowered, they will not give the right, right counsel, and then you don't do the right thing. So whether it's the communication partner or function, or even the agencies, a lot of PR partners or a lot of communication agencies also play the role of a comms partner. Listen to them.
Very true, very true. And the recent example which you mentioned, and not just the recent one, and these days, social media, in a social media driven world, people are always looking for their dopamine fix of the day, and everyone with a smartphone is a commentator. And I had my opinion on the recent goof up which happened in India, and my all my sympathies for the gentleman in question, because it was an internal meeting, and he was probably saying, and I have worked under bosses like that, and they don't mean harm. Okay, I mean, or the stuff they say, that was the 90s style of managing people, and it just was used in a wrong decade, and unfortunately somebody used an internal bite to make it viral, which is not ethical. And then of course everybody and their uncle and aunts have their opinions, and all these new age gurus and influencers who have never led us anything in their lives, they lecture people how leaders should behave, and then they add fuel to the fire, and it's all out of proportion till the next scandal comes in, and then it's
That's
forgotten.
true. That's
So so it's and what you said, again, coming back to the GE thing, which you said, that saying sorry internally and even externally, it can water down a lot of wrong things. If somebody can go and face a camera and say, okay guys, I goofed up, and this is, I didn't mean it this way, I meant it this way. People, a few might snigger, but most of them will kind of fall in love that no, this person is a genuine person. So I think that's a very important point, and I think leaders who are listening in should take note that don't hide if you make a mistake, and in this super connected world we'll all make mistakes. So and I am somebody who does a lot of talking in public, and I have realized so many times when I watch my one of my videos later, I see the wrong ways I have said something politically wrong, etc. I try to not repeat it in the next one. So it happens all the time when you are talking with people. So that it happens. So now it brings me to the next question, Rajni. And before I move to leadership essentials, which will be the last section, uh, uh, I wanted to ask, and this is kind of a related question to the last one, which is about storm prep. So storm prep is a very Jack Welch term. So we live in a day and age, like we said, that where one loose comment can wreck an entire organization, or it can actually destroy a CEO's standing in the market. And we have so many contemporary examples, like we said. So what is your advice to leaders who are on getting a robust storm prep in place, so that when storms hit you, and they will hit you every other day in this world of today, so that they can address it with maturity and calm, and like you said, neither going on front foot aggressive mode and fighting with everyone, nor resorting to complete silence, which many leaders do, which is very counterproductive, and it makes actually matters worse. So, and today, like we said, no internal meeting has a guarantee of privacy, because somebody sitting in some corner would be recording the meeting or what's going on. So what are some of the tips that leaders should keep in mind, that knowing that there'll be no secrets? Because something, in the 90s in VE, we used to have this thing called the newspaper test. That is, as a leader, before you do or say something, assume that tomorrow morning in the front page of the newspapers, that thing is going to be published, and then you do that thing. So what would be the newspaper test equivalent for leaders in today's world, Rachana?
Very interesting, the newspaper test. Very interesting, the newspaper test. And of course, when we do our media trainings for our leaders, that's one of the discussions we have. What you do not want to see next day on the newspaper, do
Right.
not say those things, right?
Right.
Because that can be detrimental. But yeah, that's also, as I said, how do you anticipate potential risk is very important. And that's where you read more newspapers, you understand, you ask for as many questions to your communicators, also collect data. Data points are very important, whether it's internal meeting or an external one, whether it's your employees. It's important to have data points to substantiate your views, right? And also waiting to see how it unfolds is no longer an option. You have to make sure that what you say is tested, it is clarified, it is something checked by your teams, and then go out. I would use a word: responsible communication is very important. What are leaders, and we are seeing our world leaders, any word that's spoken has such a big impact, right? And it can be blown out of out of proportion. And most of the organizations that I've worked, or leaders I've worked with, have always encouraged responsible communication. How do you say something and understand the context of what you're saying before it hits out? And I think that's important. Nuanced and intentional is something that we have to keep in mind. And also keep in mind, as you rightly said, social sensitivities. Where are you saying? Whom are you saying? Which culture? How will it be built up and blown out of proportion? And I think these are some of the good things that we can learn from politicians. A lot of politicians do this the right way. Very targeted, in the right language, at the right time. And I
Absolutely.
think that is one thing I would say we can learn well from them.
Totally, totally. I love the last part which you said. You can actually, this is one of the good things we can learn from political leaders. And definitely, we live in a country whose prime minister is an ace communicator. So I really admire Mr. Modi for a lot of things. But the last part which you said, he knows exactly how to package a message, how to pack a punch with the right audience in the right way, and to the right decibel level. So that is something every leader can learn. Yeah, and social sensitivity is very important these days, because uh, I don't know if that is that's a good thing or not, but we are living in a world which is oversensitive today. So something you could get away with by saying something a decade back or 1.5 decades back, you can't do it today. So you can't call a spade without somebody taking objection why you called a spade a spade. So somebody somewhere will create a fringe group and say that you should call a spade as a she or they or something like that. How can you call it a it? So and all that comes in the pronouns and all that stuff. So you have to be very sensitive, and at the same time you have to also be very authentic. And because and this was one thing I remembered while you were talking on the town hall thing, and I'll go to the last question after that. So on the town halls thing, I notice all these ho hum town halls these days, in many large organizations, and all this leadership messaging, those colorful mailers that come in, internal intra in the intranet. uh, they really are so benign and safe, and they really don't convey anything. Basically, people. So earlier, an organizational announcement was something people would look out for, or a leadership town hall where they would come to know things which they didn't know before. But now, it is so curated. Uh, uh, it's almost, somebody has scripted it, and even the Q&A. There is no authentic questions, because in the Q&A, I've noticed in many places, and people have complained that they say that you put your questions on Slido, but the moment you ask a politically sensitive question, those questions are never taken by the leader. So there are very few leaders these days who actually take the right risky questions and answer them. So this is also something probably leaders need to do more a better job at, in terms of taking questions. Okay, the answers may not be to the liking of the person who is asking, but at least take the question, but don't hide from them.
Yeah, I on to that one. I know that certain companies also use certain tools where
Mhm.
the employees are able to see the questions and how it actually, starts moving up depending on the questions taken. So you really can't hide questions. And that
Mhm.
is something which is really working these days. Also, I mean, I tend to disagree to that point that, a lot of these are curated. Some part of it can be curated, in terms of messaging. But I think the Q&As or the feedback, lot of town halls, at least that I have seen or I have done here as well, is where you invite others to come and talk about it. It's not about the CEO only. Town halls have
Yes.
become more, more sharing, more, even for not the top leaders, even, the general, the employees to come in to share, and asking tough questions are encouraged. Lot of places I've seen, one, they start with anonymous questions, but the leaders have the guts to take it. And I've seen that during tough times, it is extremely important during transformation, during, organizational, changes. This is very critical to take up important, tough, maybe irrelevant question, but why not? Because
Yes.
that engages with the employees. And I think that is, but just showing up during tough times is also very important. I think it's changing, Ion, for a lot of companies, and I've seen that in GE earlier, now with Bayer as well. So many things are changing, but the questions, the engagement, I think is very, very important and very well appreciated by all the employees.
Very true, because like we said, it's a multi-generational workforce, and this generation, especially the Gen Zs, they are very forthright, and they love uh, straightforward questions, and they can put, some, when probably when I was 25, people taught us that don't ask this question if you're talking to the CEO. But today, a 25-year-old doesn't think twice. She will ask the CEO, why do you do it this way? So, and the CEO needs to be sport enough to take that question and answer it. So great. And, one anecdote I wanted to share, Rachna, before I ask you about your personal thing, was that this was in 2000. 10, 11 sometime. There was a famous incident when we had missed a quarter in G, and Jack Welch had made that famous comment to CNBC that had I got a shotgun, I would have gone after Jeff with that shotgun. In G, you don't miss quarters. If you say it and you do it, something like that. So, and just after that, all around the power business, Steve Bowles used to lead the power business. So Steve called all the sales people, sales leaders of around 60 odd people to US, and they were all seated inside a room. We were in a room, and all round tables, 4 or 5 people in each table. And Bowles came into the room. And you've seen Bowles, right? He has a very imposing presence. He looks like a Hollywood star. So that aside, I mean, not everybody would look like a Hollywood star, but he started circulating inside, and everybody was nervous that heads will roll, we'll lose our jobs, blah blah blah. He circulated in the room for 60 minutes, Rachna. He didn't look at a piece of paper. He just spoke. He talked to people, making eye contact with everyone. And by the end of the hour, everybody was so charged up that we delivered 120 odd percent in next quarter. So that's what a real communicator is. And that video we had insisted, and that we had actually that was shot in a video. We brought it back and it was shown to all the teams across. So I think every and that's a practice start. I think you
That's
need
true.
to, because Emelt had once said, I had asked him in a town hall, Mr. Emelt, that how do you deliver a good speech? He said, because I gave 10,000 speeches. So, so that's how you do it. So now, Rachna, I mean, enough of anecdotes. I want to move to Rachana Panda, move away from Rachana Panda, the ace communicator, to Rachana Panda, the leader and the family person. Now, while I personally do not believe in this phrase work-life balance, and I'm more of a supporter of a work-life equilibrium, I am sure that our viewers, especially the women in the audience, are curious to know about your playbook on how you juggle such a high stakes leadership job uh, alongside being a homemaker and a mom. And you are also you're on the country board, you travel so much, you are seen at so many ESG initiatives, and you are someone who truly believes in giving back to society. So the short question is, how do you manage it all? And the long question is, what would be your advice to fellow women leaders and young comms professionals who aspire to a career like yours, Rachna?
Yeah, there is really no playbook, I would say, or no shortcut to success. What people see is externally would be, the good part, the travel and the talking around and, being in the forums, but one doesn't see the tough part one goes through, right? And one, behind the scenes, as one would say, but a lot of effort around it, lot of preparation, a lot of tough. The journey has not been extremely easy, but I think, I've spent a lot of my time in preparing, in developing myself. The two things that I would call out is, one is I've always taken personal development on myself. And that in GE or in all other companies, including Bayer, there are a lot of opportunities within the organization to develop. But I've always said, okay, this is not something which the organization should always do. One has to take your bet as well. Take time out. I've taken certain sabbaticals just to make sure that I go out and do a course, come back, do that extra effort. So that is important. The second thing is prioritize very, very wisely. I've always prioritized certain things in my life, given away certain things. I network, but only with a very strong purpose. Whichever meeting I attend, whether it's internal or external, it is well thought through. I will not go to every meeting just to be there. I don't really waste my time on all that of that. Couple of other things. One is financial independence. To all the women and the men listening in, financial independence, whether you are a corporate person, whether you're a startup, whether you choose not to do anything but just a hobby, financial independence is gives you the power to make those choices, and that is non-negotiable. It has to happen for everybody, I would say. Couple of things that I've done well, I guess: a supportive partner, supportive ecosystem is very important for growth. Any leader who's grown up, you will see somewhere in the system they have a supportive partner, supportive family, supportive parents, supportive in-laws. I think all of that is, somewhere you need to draw your strength to be able to go back and say, hey, this is what I did not do well. Somebody who can be very critical of what you've done very wisely, and without any wrong intent, I think has to be the family. Self-care, I think, is another important thing, whatever suits, whether it's exercising, whether it's just a hobby, whether it is just traveling. I think that's, again, I put a lot of effort on that. I seamlessly do it. And lastly, as I said, leadership is a tough journey. You evolve with time, you learn with time. There's no shortcut to that. And I'm still learning, still growing, still very excited about everything that I do. And most importantly, I would say that I have a fantastic team, whether at work, of course, at home, who make my day easier, and I get a lot of energy and strength from them. So recruiting the right people and having them in your team, developing them is one of the most important parts that one would do as a leader. So kudos to all of the teams and the family that I have, my well wishers.
Absolutely. So, and for the viewers, Rachna really walks the talk, because I remember she left GE, she took a sabbatical, she went to Harvard, did her course and came back, and then she started working again. And you mentioned support system. I totally endorse that. Whether it's a man or a woman, and especially more for women leaders, I feel that I think women leaders need to juggle much more than males. Because so many different aspects of life. Because I had recently a good friend who is a cybersecurity leader. She made a very interesting point, Susan. She said that you have only so many years in when you are on the ascent on your career, and at that time a woman has to start a family, get married, start a family, raise a kid, get back to the career, and by the time they get back, they see that they have missed out 4 or 5 years and they have fallen back in the curve. And to make that up, is, it's a big challenge. And then of course to balance priorities and all. So it's kudos. I tell this to my wife also, and I think women are born multitaskers, and it helps you to do so many things effortlessly. So great. So you mentioned family. Your daughter, what kind of profession is she interested in, Rachna?
So right now she's doing her undergrad. Of course, if a lot of times it keeps changing, but yes, she wants to make an impact, which is most important. And I think that's what she sees all around. She wants to make an impact. She has a strong point of view on things, on climate, on sustainability. She's excited about the global, the how the globe is looking at in terms of the politics side of it. So she's very excited about everything happening externally. Hopefully, she makes it big. But all I hope for her is an impactful, happy, contented lives that I would hope for all the youngsters that I see. And there's so much of hope. They are so bright. The next generation, I would say, they're so bloody bright. They are excited. I just think they need to pick up a few good communication skills
Right.
and do it the right way. And I'm sure the world is bright,
Yeah. And they're so well informed, and they are so opinionated.
which is
Something,
good.
yeah, because in our times, we didn't have access to so much information. So maybe we were a little self-conscious to voice our opinions. But today's generation is not at all self-conscious. They are completely confident of voicing their opinions, and they have very strong stands on things like you said, climate, gender equality, everything else. I mean, they are like vocal about it. So
Yeah,
so
that's why a few of them are my reverse mentors. They really do a great job around it, and we get to learn a lot from them.
fantastic. So Rajna, there are many questions and comments. So what I'll do is I'll start reading out the comments. I'll just read out, and the questions maybe we can, you can just address. So Varada is asking you, hi Rachna, what is the most important skill you believe a leader should have when it comes to communication?
Authenticity.
I think we spoke a lot about it. So Varada, authenticity is absolutely the main thing, and to keep it as the main thing. Everything else is marginalia, I would say. So, so
That's
Meera is asking you, Meera Chavan, do you think social media platforms will continue to dominate PR in the future, or will new platforms emerge?
I would say new will continue to emerge, but in some way or form. But whether we call it under social media or beyond, that doesn't really matter. But continuous improvement and new tools coming in, we will see that more and more exciting ones.
And
Maybe not the LinkedIn. We might move into something more evolved, or the Facebook is no longer as growing as much, right? So there will be new tools, but maybe the term social media will expand to embrace a lot of these new tools and platforms.
I have had an observation, Rajna, when you mentioned Facebook and Instagram, etc. I have observed that I used to think that it's a new generation thing, and people are losing their attention span, and they are getting addicted to this. But I am noticing a curious reverse trend these days, that these youngster Gen Alphas, basically, and the younger Gen Zs. These people are not so much attached to social media actually,
No, not
and
true.
their attention span is not that less. I mean, they read books. I am seeing these kids, they read books again. I mean, which was, I find, the Facebook, when you say, I see all the oldies and middle-aged people on Facebook. Kids are no longer on Facebook or Instagram. They find it very ridiculous or funny, They don't go there. So,
Yeah, they call it an old man's,
reunion club,
yeah, that's true.
whatever.
But
Yeah.
but we need all of this. We need,
Um,
the old men or women's club as well. I see a lot of, my in-laws being on the WhatsApp. For them, it is beyond just sharing information. It is a lot of connections, memories. I think all of them will coexist in some form or manner. But you're right. The new ones will evolve.
Correct, correct. Absolutely. And then Jinal is asking you, hello, what is the best piece of communication advice you both have ever received?
For me, what I've received is, and to speak out more, in early part of my career to speak more in business meetings as a communicator, to participate more, to be out there and not hold my opinions. Right? That was one of the best advice or feedback I received. And now I have to be told, can you just stop it? Sometimes, yeah.
I was about to say that the advice I have received was just the opposite, that you should speak less and listen more, because you've got two ears and one mouth, so you should listen twice of what you speak. And getting to listen better has been a arduous task for me, but I've tried to do that over the years. So yeah, speak more, so be more opinionated in meetings and talk. Hiral is asking you, how do you approach tough conversations at work, madam?
Straight and clear. I think one of the best things that one can do to any employee at work or any team and would be to be clear, candid, and tell them where they stand. Or in my feedback sessions, I'm very clear on that, the expectations, but I do it in a manner which is empathetic, which is respectful.
Correct. And I totally believe this, because this is something, Hiral, which most senior leaders will tell you, that you should not beat around the bush. When you have to deliver a tough message, you have to be to the point as much as possible, but deliver it with empathy and sensitivity. But don't avoid the real thing while you're talking. I think that's very important. So Alia is asking you, what makes a conversation memorable for you? Is this not the typical question? This is not the typical question, but I am curious about your views when it's communication outside of work.
Simple, simple communication, direct from the heart, open
Hmm.
conversation. And maybe it is because I have some extra gray hairs these days. Earlier in my life, I would be more interested in instances, but now deeper conversations really mean a lot. I would always go back to a person with whom I've had very open, candid conversations. That really is memorable for me. And even with youngsters, I love talking to the young undergrad students or university students. So much to learn from them. And all of that is very, there's a lot of wit as well. I like witty
Mhm.
conversations, a little bit of a humor. It really helps.
Sure, of course. And you remember, I think, it's like you said, you we often forget the content of of a conversation held long back, but we remember the mood that conversation put us into.
The
So if
experience.
so that experience, if it made us feel happy, we will remember that conversation. Even we forgot what it was about, but we remember that it made us feel good. So I think that's very important, Alia. So Melissa Sarao is asking you, hi Rachna. Sometimes the comms department often focuses on spotlighting leaders. Any advice on how can we help shine a light on the value we bring to organizations and leaders? I mean, the regular employees, I guess. That's what she's asking.
Yeah. For the leaders, I think every communicator wants their leaders to have the spotlight. It's
Mhm.
natural. But I think we need to bring out what is good, what is the content, what is the leader standing up for, right? How do we position the leader to the right message is important. In fact, there are times, and I mean, I can give examples in Bayer. There have been times where the company had to take positions on certain issues, like many other companies do, right? So doing that as a leader, how does that leader come up and stand for a particular cause is extremely important, and that is what brings the leader into spotlight, not the regular run of mill. That is something that one can read in a brochure, but what is the message, how are they delivering it, and what is their point of view on a particular subject is very, very important here.
Very true. And the leaders, I think, what leaders could also do, and I often feel that there is a lack of this in, at least in conventional organizations, is that leaders restrict their brand appeal to what the organizational guardrails define them as. So leaders don't have an identity beyond their business card. many leaders I have seen.
Yes.
If they can do that, that would create a better enigma around them. If they have a brand appeal which is outside their day job, I think that's very important. And to the other point, which you mentioned on the regular employee thing, I can give an example, Melissa. I worked in the formative years of the insurance industry under somebody who is probably the Amitabh Bachchan of the insurance industry in India, Sam Ghosh. So he set up Allianz and then all this company. So Sam was my boss, and I got him on this podcast also. Very, very reclusive person, doesn't like coming to. So he came here. It was the first interview he gave in many years, I think. So he used to do, when we were under him, every branch manager was made in like a mini CEO. So you run your own branch, you sign your own policies, make your own profits, and even the media interactions were given away to the branches. So branch managers, within defined scripts, you can go and talk to media. So it became a competition between the branch managers who can deliver a message and create their own brand better. So I think the common employees sometimes need to step up and create their own brand value also, not those typical. I find it very cringy, those templates which come out on LinkedIn. Every company will say today's highlighted employee, and then they will put a picture of an employee who will say, I am so happy I have got an opportunity. I don't like those. I mean, have an authentic self branding. Everybody should have that. So that's there. So I digressed, I'm sorry. So Siddhi Dubey is asking you, how do you think the growing use of mobile devices will impact the way brands interact with consumers?
So, I mean, it's already quite impactful, right? Sometimes I feel it's overexposure, right? Overexposure in terms of so much of news, so much of content on the mobiles or on any device. Interestingly, this time I was reading, and you must have heard it, Ayon, in Mahakumbh Mela, one of the brands used a stamp on the rotis, on the chapatis, right? What a terrific way, creative way of communicating across so many crores of people, right? So, and with a very, very small or limited budget, right? They spent almost nothing to the reach, right? I would say while social media or usage of phones makes things very easier, but more and more simple way of communicating is going to evolve. Now, with with mobiles, of course, videos or the AI part of it, or, now you see Facebook also has the Meta AI, right? Oh, sorry, WhatsApp. So you can ask anything and it quickly throws something out. So it's going to be more and more, easier to communicate, more and more easier to reach out to as many people as you can. But the simplicity and authenticity, as I would say, the real one will always stand apart.
Absolutely. And Siddhi, I don't know if you were probably not born then, you seem to be a young person. So when I was growing up, at least, we used to have the cinema posters which used to come up, and a movie which is going, the new Bachchan movie or the next Russian Circus or whatever, and we would wait, for months looking at that poster. So that was a communication which had a promise of showing up in the future. They didn't wait to see how many tickets will be sold. They just showed up. And now we have, everything on the mobile phone, but I hardly watch any show. So even though I have it on my phone. So I think what Rachana said, that simpler it is, but if it reaches like that Kumbh Mela example she gave, I think that is more effective, I think. So great answer, Rachana. So I think we are up on time. I'll take one more question, Rachana. It's from Andrew. What do you think? Why do you think politicians are such great communicators? They seem to have a unique flair for swaying audiences. Anything we can learn from their approach? And I think you said this earlier, but anyway, you can probably answer him.
Yeah. So because they reach out, they know the audience, which is important. I think the amount of work that any political leader does to understand his audience, I don't think any of us do, right? They have the data, and with the present, tools, they will know all the data. Where are they going? What language they need to speak to? What is the expectation? What is not working for them in their area or constituency? I think they pick all of that. They prepare extremely well, and then they connect directly. They use the same language. They will use sometimes. I mean, we've seen that in some of the elections globally, not Maybe here they've also used AI to be there wherever they want to be, good or bad. We can question that, wrong or right. But they do a lot of homework, which I think every leader, whether it's aspiring leader, potential leader, or a corporate leader, should be doing. Prepare well, know your audience, keep it simple, keep it one message at a time, not too many messages. Use wit, use humor as much as you can to connect and engage. And just from the heart, nothing will beat that.
Preparation and also course correct. I've seen, you said politicians, and I've seen this in
Yeah.
India, in recent India. The political leadership knows if a messaging had not landed well, they course correct it. Earlier regimes, I have seen people get very rigid. Leaders, I don't want to correct. It's my way or the highway. But now leaders are flexible. They correct themselves. They come back with the message that the audience wants to hear. So that's also very important. Great
And he
perspective.
used the right medium. We've seen Modi ji use radio, which was almost,
Yes,
off the
dead.
shelf, right?
Yes,
Man ki baat. So we've seen that leaders also use the right medium to reach the right audience, and that is also critical.
very important. Yeah, yeah. The right medium is very important. We spoke on transferability because unless he used that radio, he would not have reached the crores of people in rural India who probably don't use a smartphone. They still are dependent on a radio, and
Yeah.
he actually rekindled radio back to life. I think with this.
Yeah, even digital. I mean, all the political leaders and, even other leaders like Elon Musk, they use digital media to their advantage because, I mean, and coming back to the Indian government, because the government uses digital so often,
Yes.
people have started asking questions, putting their grievances there. It is getting solved, resolved there. So it is very interesting to see how use of digital by an organization or by an institution which was really regarded as old, purana, ancient. They really, they are leading the digital communication, I would say, in our
And
country.
in this connected world, I think not everybody probably will have the uh, flair of Elon Musk to do everything by themselves. But still, as much as they can, I think the takeaway from this conversation, Rachna, preparation, authenticity, warmth, empathy, clarity. I think these are some of the very important, pillars on which a great communication leader should set their leadership principles on. So thank you very much, Rachna, for your time. I know it's a busy weekday for you, and you took out an hour plus with us. So thank you, and it has been great learning for me personally, and I'm sure for our audience. So thank you for taking time. We will have a YouTube version of this, which I'll circulate and share with you, Rachna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ayon. I really am honored to be a part of this conversation, and really, thanks for inviting me to this podcast.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye
Thank you,
bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.